We're going to take a few minutes and look at all of the options that Free Transform has to offer. This document has two layers. It has the background layer as well as the kitchen layer. Now, in order to transform this in the most flexible manner possible, I'm going to convert it to a smart object by using Layer and then Smart Objects, Convert to Smart Object. Now I can make as many transformations as I want to, and I'll never lose image quality. I'll choose Edit, Transform, and while I can select from any of the options here, that's a little bit limiting, so I'm just going to use Free Transform. I can access this in the future by using Command-T on the Mac or Control-T on Windows. But the transformation handles for the kitchen layer actually extend beyond the canvas area, and while I can use the midpoint handles, if I want to see the corner points, I can use the same keyboard shortcut, the Fit on Screen or Command-0 on Mac or Control-0 on Windows, while in Free Transform in order to view the transformation handles on screen. So by default, Photoshop is going to constrain the aspect ratio as I drag to transform this layer, and that's because this icon right here for the lock aspect ratio is on by default. If you want to unlock that, simply click on it, and now you can make your distorted transformations. I'll use Command-Z in order to undo that last distortion and toggle back on the constrain or maintain aspect ratio. If I need to rotate the layer, I can just position my cursor outside of the transformation bounding box and click and drag in order to rotate. You'll notice in the center that I've got the reference point showing. That's because I've toggled on this option here in the options bar. I can change the point in which Photoshop will rotate or transform around by either clicking on a different point in the options bar. So when I click in the upper left, now when I scale or transform or rotate, it will rotate around that point. I can also just hold down the Option key and click anywhere in my image area to set the reference point. So now it will transform around that point. Or I could just click and drag the reference point. In this case, I'll put it back in the center. We can also transform the width and height and other options numerically by just entering them in the options bar. In this case, I want to remove the rotation, so I'll just highlight it and tap 0 in order to remove that. Now, if I want to access the different options like the distort options or the perspective options, I can return to the Edit menu and then transform and select them from the list. But it's going to be easier if I just Control-click on Mac or right-click on Windows in the image area and select them. So for example, if I want to skew, I'll select that, and then I'll grab the center anchor point to skew the image, or I can right-click again and choose the perspective, in which case I'll select one of the corner points, and we can change the perspective of the image, or I can right-click and choose Distort in order to freely distort my image. You'll notice that I can also rotate the image as well as flip horizontally or vertically. Well, right now I've made quite a mess, so I'm going to tap Escape to escape out of that transformation. And on the Layers panel, I'm going to hide the kitchen layer for a moment. I'm going to tap the L key, which will select the lasso tool, but I actually want the polygonal lasso tool. And I'm going to make a quick selection inside of the mirror that's on the wall. So I'm just clicking on each corner point, and Photoshop is automatically drawing a straight line between them. When I return to the point where I started, it gives me the icon with the O to close the selection. And then on the kitchen layer, I'm going to add a layer mask based on that selection by clicking on the layer mask icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. Now, in order to transform the kitchen layer within that mask, I'm going to separate the mask from the contents of the layer by clicking on the link icon. Then I'll select the photograph by targeting it in the Layers panel and choose Edit and then Free Transform or use Command or Control-T. I'll hold down the Option key and scale this down within the picture frame. And if I want to access any of the other options, for example, the Distort option, I can select that, and then I can move each one of these corner points individually to distort the image and fit it within the frame. When I'm satisfied, I'll tap Enter or Return in order to apply that transformation. But to make it look a little bit more realistic, let's go ahead and change the blend mode to either Overlay or maybe Soft Light. And I'm going to click on the mask, and on the Properties panel, I'll give it a small feather just to soften the edge around the area of the frame where I made that initial selection. So while we were using a photograph in this example, the same transformation techniques will work on any type of layer. So the next time you need to transform something non-destructively, just be sure to convert it to a smart object first and then make the transformation.